The little girl locked the front door before I had even placed my suitcase on the floor. She slipped the brass key into her pocket, looked directly into my eyes, and spoke with a calmness no 11-year-old should ever possess. She told me every babysitter eventually left, and she wanted to know how long I planned to pretend before doing the same. Her younger brother stood behind her holding a toy spaceship, waiting silently for my answer, while the billionaire who had hired me watched the entire moment without saying a single word. My name is Aria Monroe, and I was 24 years old when I accepted the most unusual babysitting position of my life. I had cared for children since I was a teenager because it was the only skill that consistently helped me pay my bills. My dream had always been to become a child psychologist, but university fees kept pushing that dream farther away every year. Even so, I refused to believe difficult circumstances could decide the rest of my future. Life often tests our patience before rewarding our persistence, and I had learned never to give up simply because the road became harder. Everything began with an email that looked almost too generous to be real. A private family was searching for a live-in babysitter for 2 children. The salary was nearly 3 times higher than any position I had ever seen, and the advertisement focused less on qualifications than personality. They wanted someone patient, emotionally mature, and willing to become a positive influence inside the home. There was no mention of the family name or their wealth, only an address on the outskirts of the city. Many English learners come across the expression "give up." It does not simply mean stopping an activity. It often describes abandoning a dream because the journey becomes difficult. I promised myself years ago that I would never give up on building the life I wanted, even if success arrived much later than expected. The driver dropped me outside a pair of enormous iron gates guarded by private security. After checking my identification, one of the guards welcomed me politely before the gates opened without a sound. The driveway curved through perfectly maintained gardens, passing fountains, sculptures, and rows of ancient oak trees before finally revealing the mansion itself. The building looked more like a luxury hotel than a family home. Tall glass windows reflected the afternoon sunlight, while elegant stone balconies overlooked a peaceful private lake hidden behind the estate. Luxury surrounded every corner of the property, yet something invisible seemed strangely absent. Beautiful houses usually carried signs of everyday life. There were bicycles beside garages, laughter echoing through open windows, or children chasing one another across the lawn. This place offered only perfect silence. A woman wearing a navy business suit greeted me inside the entrance hall. "Welcome, Miss Monroe. I'm Evelyn, Mr. Vale's executive assistant." Instead of leading me toward the family rooms, she first showed me the business wing of the mansion. I passed modern conference rooms, where assistants hurried between meetings, carrying tablets and documents. Several offices overlooked the gardens, and employees spoke quietly into wireless headsets while discussing international projects. It became immediately clear that this was not only a home, it was also the headquarters of one of the country's largest technology companies. The word headquarters often appears in business English. It refers to the main office where important decisions are made. Learning vocabulary through situations makes new words easier to remember because our minds connect them with real experiences rather than isolated definitions. Finally, Evelyn stopped outside a pair of wooden doors. "Mr. Vale is waiting." When I entered the room, Cassian Vale stood beside a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the lake. His appearance matched every newspaper photograph I had ever seen. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with quiet confidence. However, photographs had never captured the exhaustion visible in his eyes. He looked like someone who had spent years solving everyone else's problems while quietly ignoring his own. He greeted me politely before inviting me to sit. "I've read your references," he said. "Every family described you with the same 3 words." I waited patiently, kind, dependable, and calm. "I try to be," I answered honestly. For the first time, a faint smile crossed his face. "I hope those descriptions are accurate." He explained that his daughter Brielle was 11 and loved drawing, astronomy, and classical music. His 8-year-old son, Milo, preferred building model aircraft, asking impossible questions, and climbing trees despite repeated instructions not to. Listening to him describe his children revealed a completely different side of the billionaire the public believed they knew. Every sentence carried quiet affection, even when he tried to sound strictly professional. Before our conversation continued, the office door opened. Milo rushed inside carrying a half-finished model airplane. "Dad, I can't find the blue paint." Cassian gently pointed toward a nearby cabinet. "It's on the second shelf." Only then did Milo notice me. He stared for several seconds before walking closer. "Are you staying longer than the others?" His question carried no excitement, only cautious curiosity. "I hope so," I replied. He studied my face carefully before giving a small nod. "I hope you do too." Those simple words carried far more emotion than they appeared to. Children often express complex feelings through very simple sentences. Understanding someone's emotions requires listening beyond the exact words they speak. The same idea helps when learning English, because communication depends not only on vocabulary, but also on tone, context, and intention. Later that afternoon, Cassian introduced me to Brielle. She greeted me politely but without warmth. "I'll show you your room." She picked up my suitcase before I could protest and quietly led me upstairs. The second floor overlooked an impressive glass library stretching across 2 levels. Thousands of books filled polished wooden shelves reaching almost to the ceiling. Beyond the library stood a music room containing a grand piano that appeared untouched despite its flawless condition. "You can use the library whenever you want," Brielle said. "But don't go into the observatory." I glanced toward the end of the hallway, where an elegant spiral staircase disappeared behind a locked glass door. "Why not?" My mother asked Dad to keep it closed. She continued walking before I could ask another question. After unpacking my belongings, I joined the children in the garden, where Milo proudly introduced me to every corner of the estate. He showed me the greenhouse filled with rare flowers, the private dock beside the lake, and a treehouse overlooking the water. Brielle remained quieter, watching us from a distance while sketching inside a notebook balanced across her knees. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the trees, Cassian joined us carrying 4 cups of hot chocolate. It was such an ordinary family moment that I almost forgot he managed global company worth billions of dollars. Then my attention drifted toward the highest window of the locked observatory. For only a second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing behind the glass. When I looked again, the window was empty. That night, while arranging fresh towels inside my room, I discovered a folded piece of paper hidden beneath the bedside lamp. It contained only one handwritten sentence. "If Brielle ever gives you the observatory key, leave this house immediately." Before I share the rest of story, I need to know, where are you listening from? I would love to hear from you. I read the handwritten note 3 times before I convinced myself not to panic. The paper looked old, and the ink had faded slightly, suggesting it had been hidden there long before I arrived. Whoever had written the message clearly wanted it to remain unnoticed. I carefully folded it again and slipped it into my notebook instead of throwing it away. My first instinct was to ask Cassian about it, but something inside me urged patience. Asking the wrong question too early often closed doors instead of opening them. That night, sleep came slowly. Every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the figure I thought I had seen behind the observatory window. My logical side insisted it had only been a reflection, yet the mysterious note refused to leave my thoughts. By morning, I decided that the best way to understand the family was not by chasing secrets, but by earning their trust first. If answers truly mattered, they would eventually reveal themselves. Many English learners hear the phrase, "earn someone's trust." It does not mean receiving trust as a gift. It means proving through consistent actions that you deserve another person's confidence. Trust grows gradually, and every small decision either strengthens it or weakens it. The following days settled into a comfortable routine. Every morning, I prepared breakfast before helping Milo and Brielle organize their school bags. Milo filled the kitchen with endless questions about airplanes, space exploration, and inventions that probably existed only inside his imagination. Brielle remained more reserved, but she no longer watched me with suspicion. Instead, she quietly observed everything I did, as though deciding whether I belonged in their lives. One rainy afternoon, the school bus arrived nearly 40 minutes late because of heavy traffic. While we waited inside the entrance hall, Milo challenged me to build the tallest tower possible using wooden blocks stored in the playroom. We spent almost an hour experimenting with different designs before finally creating a structure that reached nearly as high as his shoulders. When the tower collapsed, he laughed so loudly that his voice echoed throughout the mansion. The sound attracted Cassian, who had just finished an online meeting. He paused outside the playroom without interrupting us. "I haven't heard this much noise in years," he admitted with a quiet smile. Milo looked proudly at his father. "We're testing gravity," Cassian laughed softly. "I can see that." The atmosphere felt lighter than it had on my first day. For the first time, the mansion resembled a family home instead of an elegant museum. Children often learn through play because curiosity encourages deeper understanding. Language learning works in a similar way. When people enjoy the learning process, they naturally remember new vocabulary more easily. Enjoyment and progress frequently grow together rather than separately. Later that evening, Brielle surprised me by knocking on my bedroom door. "I finished a drawing," she said. "Would you like to see it?" She handed me a sketchbook filled with remarkably detailed pencil drawings. Most of the pages showed the lake, the gardens, or different rooms inside the mansion. One drawing immediately caught my attention. It showed the observatory. Unlike the peaceful scenes surrounding it, the observatory appeared shaded beneath dark clouds. A single figure stood inside the highest window, looking down toward the lake. "You draw beautifully," I said honestly. She smiled faintly. "My mother taught me." Before I could respond, she carefully closed the sketchbook. She spent a lot of time in the observatory. Her words reopened the questions I had tried to ignore. The next morning, Evelyn asked me to bring lunch to Cassian because he had remained inside the conference room since sunrise. As I approached the business wing, I noticed raised voices behind the closed glass doors. Although I never intended to overhear private conversations, several sentences reached me before I could quietly walk away. "The board is losing patience," a woman's voice said firmly. Genevieve Sinclair. I've given them my decision, Cassian answered calmly. They expect stability before approving the merger. My children come first. There was a brief silence. They're also asking questions about Arabella's estate. The conversation stopped as footsteps approached the door. I quickly placed the lunch tray on a nearby table and stepped away before anyone noticed me listening. The word stability appears frequently in business English. It describes a situation that remains secure, dependable, and unlikely to change suddenly. Investors often value stability because it reduces uncertainty, while families value emotional stability because it creates a safe environment where trust can grow. That afternoon, Genevieve found me in the greenhouse while Milo watered the flowers. I hope you're settling in well, she said politely. I am, thank you. She watched Milo carefully before speaking again. Those children have experienced more loss than most adults. I know, her expression softened. Then please remember something important. She hesitated before continuing. They become attached very easily. Her words sounded more protective than threatening. I have no intention of hurting them, I replied sincerely. I believe you, she answered. But life doesn't always ask what we intend. After she left, I realized my first impression of Genevieve had been incomplete. She did not seem jealous or controlling. Instead, she appeared deeply concerned about a family she had watched struggle for years. That evening, Cassian canceled another business dinner so he could join us for movie night. Milo insisted on making popcorn himself, creating far more mess than food, while Brielle quietly laughed every time her brother accidentally dropped another handful onto the kitchen floor. Watching Cassian clean the mess without complaining reminded me how much he had changed in only a short time. As the movie ended, Brielle quietly slipped away without anyone noticing. Nearly 15 minutes passed before Milo asked where she had gone. Cassian immediately stood. We searched the mansion together until I noticed a faint light shining through the glass door leading to the locked spiral staircase. The observatory. Cassian reached the door first. It was unlocked. His face lost all color. Brielle, he called urgently. No answer came. He slowly pushed open the door, and all of us hurried upstairs together. At the very top of the observatory, beneath the large glass dome overlooking the night sky, Brielle stood beside an old wooden telescope. In her hands was a small silver key. She looked at her father with frightened eyes before turning toward me. I found Mother's last letter, she whispered, and I think someone has been lying to us ever since. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The observatory felt strangely different from the rest of the mansion. Dust covered the wooden floor, old astronomy books filled the shelves, and the enormous telescope pointed toward the clear night sky, as though someone had used it only yesterday. Brielle held the silver key tightly, while looking back and forth between her father and me. Whatever she had discovered had frightened her far more than the dark room itself. Cassian slowly walked toward his daughter. Where did you find the letter? He asked gently. She pointed toward a narrow cabinet built into the stone wall beside the telescope. It was hidden behind the books. His expression immediately changed. I searched this room after your mother died, he whispered. I never found anything. Brielle carefully unfolded the yellowed envelope before handing it to him. My name was written on the front. Cassian stared at the familiar handwriting without opening the letter. His hands trembled slightly, and for the first time since I had arrived, I saw uncertainty replace the confidence that had always surrounded him. Some English learners noticed that the word hesitate appears in emotional stories. It describes the moment when someone pauses before making an important decision because uncertainty or fear makes the next step difficult. We all hesitate at different moments in life, especially when strong emotions are involved. After taking a slow breath, Cassian finally unfolded the letter. The room remained completely silent while his eyes moved across each line. His breathing became heavier with every passing second, and when he reached the final page, he quietly closed his eyes. "What does it say?" Brielle asked. He looked at both children before answering. "Your mother wrote this during the final months of her illness." The children exchanged confused looks. "Illness?" Milo repeated softly. Cassian lowered his head. "I wanted to protect both of you until you were older." Brielle's face filled with confusion. "You told us Mom died because of an accident." "I told you the accident happened," he answered quietly. "What I never explained was that your mother had already been fighting a serious heart condition for nearly 2 years." The observatory became painfully quiet. Cassian explained that Arabella had insisted on keeping her illness private because she wanted her children to remember her laughter instead of endless hospital visits. Even many relatives had never learned how serious her condition had become. She had continued painting, writing, and watching the stars from the observatory because those moments made her feel alive, despite everything she was facing. Tears slowly filled Brielle's eyes. "So she wasn't unhappy here?" Cassian immediately shook his head. "No." He handed her the letter. "Read her own words." Brielle carefully read the final paragraph aloud. "If you are reading this one day, please do not remember this house as the place where I became weak. Remember it as the place where I watched both of you grow into kind people. Please do not let sadness become another member of this family." No one spoke for several moments. I quietly looked through the observatory windows toward the peaceful lake below. Suddenly, many things began making sense. The locked observatory had never been hiding a terrible secret. It had protected memories that Cassian simply had not been emotionally ready to face. Many people believe that keeping painful memories hidden will make them disappear. However, emotions usually become heavier when they remain unspoken. In English, people sometimes use the expression "carry emotional baggage" to describe unresolved pain from the past. Healing often begins when people finally allow themselves to face those feelings instead of avoiding them. The following morning, Genevieve arrived earlier than usual after receiving Cassian's unexpected phone call. He invited her into the observatory before anyone else entered the room. Nearly an hour later, both of them returned carrying several journals and photo albums that had belonged to Arabella. "I should have encouraged you to open this room years ago," Genevieve admitted quietly. Cassian gave a thoughtful nod. "I wasn't ready then," she smiled gently. "Now you are." That afternoon, the four of us spent hours reading Arabella's journals together. Instead of finding sadness on every page, we discovered stories about family picnics, funny mistakes Milo had made while learning to ride a bicycle, and Brielle's first attempts at painting the night sky. Arabella had even written a private letter to her future babysitter, although she never knew who that person would be. "Whoever helps care for my children," she had written, "please remind them that kindness is stronger than fear, and curiosity is stronger than regret." Those words touched me more deeply than I expected. As evening arrived, Cassian walked beside me onto the terrace overlooking the lake. "I've spent years trying to protect my children from pain," he said quietly. I looked toward the mansion, where Brielle and Milo were laughing together while organizing their mother's journals. Today, They taught me something instead. He smiled with genuine peace for the first time since I had met him. They reminded me that love does not disappear when someone is gone. Sometimes it simply waits for the right moment to guide a family home again. Watching the children through the glowing windows, I realized my journey to the Vale estate had never been only about finding a better job. Without planning it, I had arrived at exactly the moment one family found the courage to replace unanswered questions with truth, and that truth became the first real step toward healing every heart living beneath that remarkable roof. If you liked this story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.